Thank you, Michael.
My pleasure.
I don't know what happened. We spent about 20 minutes practicing my name, how to pronounce it for Michael. I don't know. He didn't do a very good job. Just easy, Michael. Have a seat. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Zbigniew Krobot. I'm a partner in our Advanced Analytics and Digital Practice in Public Sector. And I'm here with a very exciting panel. We'll introduce our panelists here in a second, but it's great to be here. You picked the right room. This is the right panel, I think. We're going to have some fun here. It's going to be a great conversation. We're going to have some fun. So we typically, introduce the panelists sort of in the standard way, short paragraphs. So we're going to change it up a little bit. And these guys have no idea what's coming. We did not rehearse this. So
this was not in the email.
This is not in the email. It's a big surprise for them. So we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to start asking you questions real easy. What I'd like you to do is to just respond as quickly as possible, a rapid fire kind of response.
At the same time?
No.
I was just making sure.
That's the question.
So Dave first, and then Chris, if you could respond right after that. The less time, the better. So name.
David.
Full name.
Vargas. David Vargas.
Christopher Morley Zobler, sorry.
Didn't get the memo.
No.
Title.
Yeah. Director, Human Resources, line of business.
Director for Sales for Watson Data and AI.
Organization.
Office of Personnel Management.
IBM.
Years in current position.
5 years, sort of.
2 years in the position, 18 years with IBM.
And how do you know each other?
We met at the...
Right outside, just met.
All right, so that was the easy set. Now a little bit, let's mix it up a little bit. Plain socks or pattern socks?
Blank socks.
Pattern socks.
All right. Wine or beer?
Both.
Wine and bourbon.
All right.
Better answer.
Soccer or football?
Soccer.
Football.
Huh. Favorite team?
Brazil.
New England Patriots.
All right.
Tough crowd.
Now the really hard. Now the really hard questions. Taylor Swift or Kim Kardashian?
Oof.
I love my wife, so I'm going to go with my wife. Play it safe.
I'm going to go with Taylor Swift.
Oh, really? And then Kanye West or John Legend?
John Legend.
Is that even a question? John Legend.
I had to ask. Apparently that's like in the social media right now. Don't ask me. All right, well, thank you guys. Thank you for being good sports and answering some of these questions. So now on the more serious topic, data-driven modernization, right? So I think it's a very exciting and timely topic. And just like in some of the other sessions, we're here to talk about some real progress, real initiatives. And Dave, I know that you're working at OPM on a real initiative that has a lot of potential positive impact on federal employees. Just out of curiosity, how many federal employees are in the room? Very good. Actually, it looks like the majority. So I think this conversation is going to be highly relevant to your professional lives, and hopefully you will see some of the positives that may be coming real soon out of the Office of Personnel Management and the vision for data management across the federal government. So Dave, you've held a number of senior positions in the federal government. You have a very successful career. You were the Deputy Assistant Secretary at HUD. At OPM, you've held a number of senior positions, including the Acting CIO, the Associate CIO, as well as the Director of HR Line of Business. So I think it's safe to say that you've seen it all. You've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to data information management in the federal government. You're now leading this important high-priority initiative at OPM. You mentioned it if you guys were across the hall, across the atrium in the other room. Dave talked about the employee digital record a little bit. So Dave, could you share a little bit more about the employee digital record initiative? And also, could you talk about a little bit more about the challenges that have led to the EDR as an initiative and priority for OPM?
So actually, this dates back to when I first came to OPM to do technology transformation for human capital. One of the first things that I noticed is the way that we collect the data at OPM, very much cylinder-based, and a lot of duplicative data. So, and I kind of put my accountant hat on, and I say, you know what, in the financial management side, we have this thing called a vendor file, where we have the core components of a vendor that we pay regardless of, contract source, whether it's a subsidy, whatever the case may be, very tightly guarded. There's your banking information, there is, the employee identification number, et cetera. There's no equivalent in the federal government. What I saw was, depending on what area you were doing it was a lot of paper-based. It could be David A. Vargas in one, Dave Vargas in another one, or Dave Vargus, because sometimes when I pronounce the A, it comes out as a U, so it's Vargus. So I started looking at this like, there's got to be an easier way. And now I kind of asked the question the last session, do you know how many federal forms do we have for human capital? And it's in excess of 760 forms for about what we have determined to be about 2,000 data elements or so. So that's an average of 3 data elements per form. That means the rest of it is just duplicative, just a lot of duplicate information that systems don't talk to one another. And it's very problematic. Right? So we're being audited, of course. A lot of our change is driven by either GAO or the Inspector General's office. Our payroll data is very challenging. Sometimes the data doesn't, comes in. Sometimes it doesn't come in for months, and it's created a problem for the policy folks at OPM because they need data to formulate policy. For our CHICOs, our Chief Human Capital Officers, to do strategic planning, strategic thinking. As to how they do process and how they do human capital in their agencies. And more importantly is a lot of the functions that we perform at OPM that are critical to our operations. For example, I'll give you a couple. Retirement record. We are the only ones that can do retirement determinations. It takes a couple months now to do a retirement determination where if you had the data, and you were first, and you could probably do this in a few minutes. So there's a need for us to do a couple of things. Number one is collect data that is timely, accurate, complete, and relevant. Very, very, very important. Number two is make sure that only the people that have the ability to see that data can see it, right? So, controlling the access to the data is critical. And the immutability of the data, make sure that it cannot be changed in terms of the record, right? So, everybody makes mistakes, so you have to have the ability to change a record. But you don't change it by deleting it, you change it by overwriting. And that audit trail is something that is very, very important for us to do. And the one thing that our Chico Council told us to do is we have access to very limited data today, and we spend lots of money trying to collect that information. We don't have access to payroll information, and we don't have access to what we call core HR, which is your personnel action processing, your SF50, SF52s. That is it. We need the entire life cycle. We need to know training. We need to do credentials. We need to know what performance look like. We need to know, about benefits so we can reconcile with the health benefit vendors. We need a lot of different types of information that we need to capture. We need to do it effectively, efficiently, and timely. How do we do that? And that was the impetus of us taking a look at a better way to get data from point A to point B.
So hopefully you can sense the passion that Dave has for this topic and for this issue. And there are clearly a lot of challenges and pain points in the HR space when it comes to information and data management. So Chris, let me turn over to you. You as a senior leader in our IBM Cloud and AI organization, you work with IBM's clients in the private sector. Can you talk about some of the similar challenges that Dave just described, and how would you compare and contrast it?
So what I would say is that those challenges are not unique. Frankly, when you think about the life cycle for data science, what is needed is data, right? All the things that we've talked about that was in the previous presentation, it requires a lot of data. In the traditional world of data governance, I spent 10 years in IBM's analytics practice selling traditional data governance, which used to be lock everything down to the floor, don't let anybody have access. Governance was you're in or you're out. The transformation that we see happening across the globe now, across all industries, not just private and public, but commercial sector, is that this new wave of governance to drive better analytics means that data has to be open, but still governed. So we are talking to clients every day about cloud. It is not about one cloud. Every organization will have multiple clouds if you don't already have clouds today. So the question then becomes, we understand that we need access to the data that could reside in a data silo or in a different organization. It could potentially reside in somebody else's cloud or somebody else's SaaS application. So how do I then improve and provide transparency to data lineage, all the things that David spoke to, when the start point and the end point are no longer behind the firewall? So what we've started to see as people have taken the journey and started the journey down to leveraging machine learning and artificial and assisted intelligence, really, is to get a better handle on their data, regardless of where the data sits. To me, a data asset is a data asset. I don't care which cloud it's in, I don't care what format it's in, but you have to have that ability to govern and manage that asset so that way you can increase reusability of those assets and then ultimately provide that in a way that is easy to search and find. The number one thing that we found over the past 4.5 years as we've taken this journey is that data professionals' number one pain point is not what they do when they get the data. It's that it takes 80% of their time to find the information that they're looking for to do the task. So if 4 out of 5 days of our week is spent asking our neighbors, what data do you have and can I have access to it? Imagine how much more productive we would be across the board if we could had a very search-friendly, a findability solution that said, in natural language, tell me where all these documents are. Tell me who the people are that may be afflicted by X. Tell me the people that should be ready for retirement, and then surface all the documents. And through that one common system of governance, then have the system of record, have the solution help me and help the enterprise really roll out true governance, because it will determine whether David can see the full asset or whether I get truncated and all of my data is obfuscated. So that's really the transformation that we're starting to see.
Actually, those are excellent points, especially on the governance side. When we're dealing with over 300 agencies, sub-agencies, bureaus, and you're talking about cylinder of data collection, the governance over that is so critical, because what happens is those definitions and those naming conventions mean something different depending on who you're talking to. So if you're talking to one provider, it's one way, a different provider is a different way, and then when you try to bring it all together, assuming that you can get your hands on it, it doesn't necessarily mean the same thing. So one of the things that we started doing at OPM is base one was getting data standardized. We created a data review board with all the executives at OPM who have to vote on all of the standards. And we're gonna have about 2,000 standards for all human capital lifecycle by the end of this year. We're about 1,300, so about 2/3 of the way there. And it's been a very interesting process over the past 7 months getting this done, but you gotta start there. Things have to have the same meaning regardless of who's providing the service to you.
Great. So it's somewhat reassuring that I think the challenges are similar, if not identical, both in the private sector and public sector, and then how they could be then addressed. Hopefully there are similar solutions. Dave, I know that the user experience, the employee experience, if you will, is very important to you as you sort of embark upon this EDR initiative. And I know that you're wearing multiple hats as an employee, as a manager, as an executive. I remember we had a number of conversations when you first joined OPM. You had some serious pain points that you experienced yourself directly. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the challenges that the employee himself or herself is experiencing as a result of the somewhat disjointed data management and sharing?
So, funny anecdote here with Director Palmer when I first came on board. I think it was mid-March. We're sitting in a room and he asked the question, says, Dave, do you know how many apps the federal government has for federal employees? And I thought about this and I'm going, one. Do you know what that one is? Government's open or government's closed. And he laughed. He answered his own question because I was actually pondering on that. I'm like, I don't really know the answer to the question. Because we have one, whether the government's open and closed. And he's a very big digital guy. He talks about AI. I was just in Cincinnati. He was addressing the benefit officers conference down there. There's about 300 people in the room, and he is just kind of going off about about apps and artificial intelligence and some of the things that he wants to do as director of OPM. Right now, the data is incomplete, fragmented, and employees don't have access. If you want to have access to your data, you have to go into EOPF. I've gone into my EOPF. I have like 50 different folders and a bunch of PDF files within those folders. Very difficult to do anything with that. I don't know if it's complete. I hope it's complete, but I'm not taking any chances. I actually print every 52, I'm sorry, I do. And I have files at home just to make sure that nothing drops out of my record. We can't do business that way. There's no ability to self-service, right? You know, I do web banking, and I can do just about anything. I can change my password. I can change my routing number. I can pay my bills. I can do all kinds of things on web banking. That's kind of the same thing that we need to do for an employee. You know, give the ability to the employee to at least see the records, right? I think I was at the same session. We had TSP come in and say, you know what? We just put in the TSP form, whatever, where you can actually see who your beneficiary is, right? So if there's a life change or whatever, or you want to change who your beneficiaries are, right now there's, you got to go back to the records to see who the last one that you appointed. At least right now there's a PDF that you can see that. But you should have access to that information readily. And if you want to make a change with the proper access, with the proper controls, of course, you should be able to do that. You should be able to do a lot of the self-service. So instead of doing data entry and processing, because when you provide the form, somebody's got to key it in. And there's fat fingers everywhere, so we got to be very careful on what gets entered. So having the ability to self-service, having the ability to have a employee digital record that populates whatever it is you want to do, and then all you do is just make the one change that needs to be made instead of having to populate the whole form. How about that? Right? Those are the kind of things that we want to look at, that we want to be able to do. And we've very much aligned, all the things are aligned. OPM and strategic plan, objective 2.3 talks about the employee digital record. The president management's agenda talks about an employee digital record. Our congressional budget justification talks about employee digital record. We have a data review board in place. We're doing data standards. All the things are aligned. The thing that is not yet aligned is the technology that we're going to use to get data from point A to point B, and that's actually, having done many change management and technology, project management for technology change. That's the easy part. The hard part is getting everybody on board. That's the tough part. So we're in a place where we can actually, we hope that we can deliver, and that's where we are today.
Great, thank you, Dave. So Chris, in terms of user experience, what have you seen in the private sector with our private sector clients? What are some of the trends or approaches to improving user experience when it comes to data management, information sharing, AI?
So I'll make one comment and then share a little bit. But as we talk about data access, so the concept of crap in, crap out that we've talked about for a long time, this is truly the intersection where we've now started to embed machine learning models. So as we start to ingest data, so even in the case of self-service, there may be some fat fingers, but I may forget a digit. I may forget to fill out a required form, or frankly, some important forms, depending on where that data asset's going to go. So what we've built into our platform from a data and AI perspective, if we had this conversation 6 months ago, we had a data and analytics strategy and an AI strategy. The reason that I run both of those businesses today is because the data is critical to drive down the path and to start the journey towards AI. But things like machine learning algorithms that can take a look at the data set, give me a real-time score to let me know how complete the data set is. Help me start to understand accuracy trends based on the forms that I'm submitting. Because when you go to the other end of the spectrum, and there's an entire machine learning life cycle. It's really an analytics life cycle. Can I get access to the data? How am I going to shape that data and transform that data, which will change depending upon the application that I'm actually going to leverage that data asset for? How do I enrich that data? What about creating data pipes? Then you get into data science, where we really start to do experimental transformation of those data and enrichment of the data asset itself, ultimately to deployment. That's where the interaction is going to start to come in. But we focus very heavily on the data aspect, because then the integration with the way that an end user will then start to make changes to the data. So whether it's omni-channel approaches to chatbot solutions, write once, deploy anywhere. I should be able to make that same change to my record if I'm authenticated from an SMS text message, if I'm speaking to an avatar, if I make a phone call and go around an IVR system. That's the interaction phase. We've taken the tact to bring these two things together. It's a perfect marriage because you should not have one without the other, which is why many of the first AI projects were skunkworks projects that failed. And we learned along the way to say it really has to start with managing and maintaining the data assets to then change that user experience. And as long as I can provide that governance framework, then whether it's a chatbot or it's a visual recognition API, all of a sudden now I can make real-time changes with that transparency to every single change that's been made, who made it, what was the change, and do I have control of the data assets and those models that I've created. So it's a fantastic, fantastic journey, but you have to start somewhere.
So to those of you feds in the room, imagine what he just said. If we can go into EOPF and the EHRI data warehouse, right, pull out all of the 5052 records and create a retirement record for our 2.1 million federal employees, where we can identify points of disagreement between those two systems, where we can serve that to a federal employee for validation, just like Social Security Administration does. You know, when you get your annual statement, you know, every single year it's in there. Why? Because the last 30, you know, the top 35 years becomes the basis for your Social Security retirement benefit, right? So, you know, those are the kind of capabilities that we should be kind of striving towards in terms of this data and the technology that is here today. This is not, you know, what was the name of that program? You know, space program in the future. This is here today.
Yeah. So speaking of journeys, Dave, you know, you're at the beginning of the EDR journey. I think it's been a few years in the making. I think I remember 5 years ago when you joined OPM, we had a conversation about, this is a little inside joke, Nirvana conversation. I think you had a vision for this type of improved management and governance around HR data.
So let me first preface that by saying, okay, so it's been 5 years, but it hasn't been 5 years doing this. I just
right. You had multiple roles.
So yeah, there was a couple of years there in CI and all that. But this goes back to the very beginning, right? So when we look at, you know, change is tough. I mean, it's difficult to do major change. I've done two major change management projects at HUD. The first one was on improper payments and bringing technology to find out who was underreporting or not reporting their income to get additional or subsidies to which they were not entitled. And that was a big project. The other one was converting an entire industry, 40,100 housing agencies from, you know, we call it HUD accounting, which nobody learns in college. You learn generally accepted accounting principles. This is HUD accounting, and paper to a web-based application. And those were some pretty tough change management. So I do understand how difficult it is to do this. Three things that you know, in my experience in doing this work is the vision and the leadership there. And with Dr. Pond, we have that, right? So the second the thing that you need is the resources to make the change happen. And we have multiple ways of getting there, right? So it doesn't have to be the federal government putting up all the funds. We've done RFIs and looked at different ways to finance doing this EDR. But the last thing is that authority, right? And that's the tough part, right? Bringing everybody together and make sure you have the authority to effectuate change. So it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge that I've taken and continue to undertake. And my hope, and based on our strategic plan for OPM, is that we can actually deliver on this. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, continuing that challenge. And you know, we're going to have our bumps along the way, no question about it. We're dealing with 24 CFO agencies, 300 sub-agencies, bureaus, independent agencies, and so on. There'll be bumps along the way, but it's doable. There's no question in my mind.
So Chris, on the topic of change management, I know that you like to say that analytics and data science is a team sport. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that concept and what recommendations or lessons learned you would have to share with Dave and the rest of the people in the room?
I think the comments David made about change being tough really was the driver behind our approach to say, as we continue down our own cloud journey, if you look at that life cycle that I talked about before, it is a team sport. Think about any analytics process or operation that you're going to run. It's going to involve multiple people with multiple different skill sets. And now as we go to deep learning as a service and machine learning, it's a whole different realm of skill set. It's a different set of tools that those individuals would use versus somebody that's just creating a BI dashboard or somebody that's doing data massaging so that we can actually do some consolidation of financial reporting. So the whole concept that we took 2.5 years ago is to say, stop, let's design and build from the ground up a platform that allows for collaboration for all of the resources within an organization that would touch a data or an analytics asset. So to drive change is difficult. What we've started to see across multiple industries is our clients don't necessarily want a bucket of Legos. And I don't know how else to describe it, but you can pick your best of breed products from any vendor you want, and you can make your Lego any sets of colors that you want. What we're really seeing now is a thirst for platform to say whether I want to develop an open source code and write in Python and R and Scala, or I just want dashboarding as a service, not a per user price and a per server price, but I want to do ad hoc, real self-service, and I want to be able to bring open source capabilities to that platform because we recognize as IBM, it's a different IBM. 5 years ago, we would have had a different conversation. We have embraced open source in a way that you would not believe, and we'd love to have that discussion with you. But the reason that we've built our entire future-facing data and AI platform on open technologies is because that's where innovation is happening. So this platform needs to not only allow those that are working on projects to collaborate with one another, to speed innovation and to speed efficiency, but it also has to be open around the edges so that way as new capabilities and new technologies emerge, we're ready. We don't have to do application rewrites. We're in the position now where we're looking and driving towards embedding our capabilities as opposed to rewriting our capabilities, all wrapped around the concept of team sport, because you can't do it on your own. And most importantly, as folks retire and come in and out, as millennials come in with new technologies and skills, how do we integrate them in with that change control from a platform perspective so that way we can train new people? That skills gap is getting wider and wider. I would love to be the data scientist that gets $1 million a week in Silicon Valley to go write models, but there are unicorns. There are very few that exist. So how do we address all of these things from a platform perspective, give people a better collaborative environment with better tools so that way we can drive efficiency, effectiveness, and productivity across the enterprise?
Great insights. And if those data scientists are unicorns in Silicon Valley, imagine how many there are in the federal government. Dave, I loved your comment about executive sponsorship or the executive involvement to promote and actually make transformation happen. You mentioned Director Pon, and I know that Director Pon has formulated a very aggressive agenda for using innovative technology to improve employee experience and drive some of these modernizations across the federal government. Could you talk a little bit about the alignment between the EDR initiative and some of the sort of top-level priorities coming from the director and the White House?
So when we talk about the alignment is that data platform component is such a critical alignment to everything we're trying to do. So the Director Pon, one of the things that he talked about he called it a hiring hiring manager, like a consultant that could assist federal supervisors in the hiring process. We've had some discussions in terms of putting together these retirement records. We talked about a lot of different things that he would like to do and how they align to between this layer of data. To me, one of the most exciting components is changing in government the way that we consume human capital information technology. So the old way has translated into over 800 applications in the federal government to do human capital. Over 800. For time and attendance alone, I think it's 128. right? So we took payroll down from 26 payroll providers, 26 different applications down to 4 in about 5 years. That was a big, big deal that we did. Same thing with core HR processing. Saved the government about $2 billion over a 10-year period. Now that's $100 million a year in terms of federal dollars. No, that's beer money. That's not a lot of money, but it's money that you can repurpose, right, to other innovative, wonderful things. Imagine what you could do. Talk to yourselves or to your bosses, whatever. Could you use $100 million on an annual basis, government-wide, to do some good things in technology? I think the answer to that will be yes, right? Any idea here how much we spend in the federal government for human capital information technology? Any guess? Just give me a guess. Ramos. How much? 15 billion. 5 billion. The answer is we don't know, right? Right? No, I'm being honest. So we did some extensive analytics in 2014 using OMB 53300 data. We did a data call to all federal agencies. OMB sent out a data call on our behalf, and the best that we could come up with is somewhere between $1.7 billion and $2.3 billion a year. That's on average about $1,000 per federal employee. There are about 2.1 million federal employees. That is a boatload of money, folks. And I will give to you that if I go into TurboTax or tax cut, I can get the entire tax code for $59.95 in a cloud environment where I don't have to worry about data centers and any other nonsense. And I'll just leave it at that.
No, this is fascinating. Fascinating conversation. I see that we're out of time. So thank you, Dave. Thank you, Chris, for your insights. And Dave, congratulations on having a terrific vision and, more importantly, acting on that vision and driving some real meaningful change for federal employees and federal government as a whole. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.